Was the 2024-25 season a waste or a step in the right direction? We'll debate that more on today's episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Thank you to our everydayers who are subscribed to the Locked On Leafs podcast each and every day. Just a reminder that the podcast is an all-year-round show, and we'll be here to walk you through till the end of the playoffs, the draft, free agency, and then all summer long leading into next season. So make sure you're locked in and subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast. What's happening, Dave? How we feeling?
Feeling pretty good. I don't know how all of a sudden I got a cold in what has been probably... Actually, I should blame the dumbest weather we've had in Toronto apparently since 1967.
Yeah, that's... Oh, really? Since 1967?
Apparently, this is the coldest, when we had that cold spell, May, apparently that was the coldest May we've had since 1967.
Yeah, it's been raining all week too. It's supposed to rain like for majority of next week. It's crappy. I truly do believe that we've just there's been such a shift where now our seasons are literally just pushed a whole month forward. Used to be April showers, bring May flowers. Now we just got the showers going in May, and June, July, August will be nice. And nowadays you can wear shorts all the way through October, and it's not until November where it starts to get chilly. So it's gotta, we'll see what happens. But
hockey guards, it's not the hockey guards crying for the Leafs. It's like it's the laughing cry on the Leafs.
Yeah. Is that what it is? A laughing cry. They're just like, they did it again. Those stiffs did it again. Oh, man. All right. So, look, we're going to get into what happened this season. We haven't really, with, the Shanahan news coming, and then we just kind of dove into the loss to Florida, and then the Shanahan speculation followed by the news. We haven't really had a chance to look at the season as a whole yet, Dave. And I think today we might have a chance to do that. So ultimately, I think the big question that we should, as Leaf fans, look to answer ourselves when we look back on the 24-25 season was it a waste or was it a step in the right direction? And there's multiple ways that we can approach this question to try and get to the bottom of it. So I think we can kind of start and go through and those different paths or ways to get to that ultimate answer. I'm curious, you listeners, what did you think? Did you think that this was a waste, or did you think that this was, a good step in the right direction type of season for Toronto? Let us know in the comment section down below. Dave and I are going to spend the next, 20 or so minutes going over trying to answer that question ourselves. So I guess, how do you want to approach this question, Dave? How do you think we should start things off? I guess the first answer or first question we could ask that could try and lead us into the direction of finding an answer is, did you think that this season was a failure? Yes or no? It's a yes or no blanket statement there. Was it a failure? Yes or no?
I think it was a failure because the whole time we kept hearing, this year feels different. Everything feels different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sure is. Didn't feel different at the end now, did it? Because a lot of people I talked to, guys, at weddings, why do I always have to deal with what happened to the Leafs at the wedding talks? Thank God I had alcohol at least to get me through those conversations. But it's like a lot of them are just like, yeah, but you know what? How can we not have expected this at the end? Yeah. And that, I think, was the failure. That they didn't change the narrative, which was their inability to come through. Look, as bad as they had played in that game 5, they could have changed a lot of people's minds if they won that game 7. But what did they do? They proved them right once again. And to me, that makes the whole thing just feels like a failure because everything they had done led up to that big dud.
I can reason with that. I think that's a good, like, when you look at it from a season to season approach. Yes, I guess it was a failure because this team had Stanley Cup aspirations, and ultimately they didn't reach the Stanley Cup final. They didn't reach the conference final. Again, they missed out. They lost in pretty embarrassing fashion when they had an opportunity to do so, and it's for a lot of the same reasons that we've been talking about over the last 5, 6 years. When these teams get eliminated, it's just a copy and paste from last year, the year before that. Go find the script from our show from that year and just copy it in. And it's pretty much the exact same situation. The power play went dead, the Stars went cold, and they couldn't get it done when it mattered most. The Stars fading later, they get into series. And that ultimately was obviously the problem, especially when you look at the Florida series. But like, I do have to ask you, because I don't think it was a failure, right? Or at least I don't think it was a wasteful season. I think
Mhm.
two things can be true. Did they fail to win? Yes. And was that their goal? Yes. But I don't think it was a wasteful season. I think a lot of good, came out of this year. Like, I don't think it had to be cup or bust, right?
Yep.
Like, I think you wanted to see steps in the right direction. I personally think we did see that from this Maple Leafs team. Like, when you look at it from the big picture, Dave, right? I think you look at the coach. Craig Berube was brought in. We now have a full year to, look at it and address and assess the coaching situation. I think the Maple Leafs found the right guy. I really do. I think that coach Craig Berube, there's a track record there, and I think that you can conceivably see that, the structure that he brought to this team when they actually executed the X's and O's of what Berube was preaching and teaching, it proved to be a winning formula. Just go look at game 6 and how well that team banded together, and they shut out the Florida Panthers, the vaunted, daunting Florida Panthers. Shut them out 2-0. They beat them. And it's because they played to the structure and played to how Berube wants them to. So I think you found a coach and you found the right style that can win you games. I think big picture wise, I do believe that is a positive and a step in the right direction. I think you look at the results of this year. Sure, they lost in the second round, but they did win the division title for the first time since 1999. That's something, right? You can hang your hat on that at the very least. I get it. Regular season success doesn't mean anything ultimately, but I think you can build off of that at least. And now that's your barometer every year. Try and at least earn that home ice. And you can do it. You did it last year. You could do it again, right? So that's good, I would say. And then ultimately, when you look at the roster construction for how this team kind of started and then how it ended, I think you like what this team looks like. You feel most confident as you have in a long time in this blue line and the goaltending, right? Like, once they brought in Brandon Carlo, it seemed to really shore up that top four, right? You had Tanev and McCabe as that shutdown pairing. Then you had Carlo as a good complement to what Morgan Riley brings to the table. And that allowed OEL to excel in a third pair role with Simon Benoit, who kind of came on and played a really solid third pair defensive role this year. So I think you like what you have as a defensive group, and all 6 of those players are under contract moving forward into next year. So I think that is a step in the right direction. And then obviously the goaltending. The Leafs is the best goaltending the Leafs have gotten since Eddie Belfour, right? And that was the last time that this team, was actually in contention for Stanley Cup championships, right? Ed Belfour, they actually won rounds each and every year that he was the goaltender. Well, they were able to win a round this year with Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Fall, and both of those guys, just like the blue line, intact moving forward in the next season. So you have a goaltending mix that you believe you can win with. So you got the blue line in check, you got your goaltending in place, and now you just got to figure out what you're going to do up front. And again, the big question mark is obviously John Tavares and Mitch Marner. Are you going to try and run it back with all those guys again, or are you going to try and change up the mix? That's kind of, I guess, a question that we can continue to ask ourselves over the next few weeks here leading into the offseason. But I think those kind of 3 things, big picture wise, you can look at it and say, you know what, we lost at the end of the year. We did lose. We flailed out in the second round once again, but we took the defending champs to game 7. They may be reigning champions. They might go back to back this year, 3 straight trips to the Cup final. They're just the better team. But you took them to 7 games. You still won 7 playoff games, something this team hadn't done in 20 years. And you like the direction that the team is moving into, and you like the coach, the goaltending, the defense. Once you figure it out up front, which is hilarious to say, I think you're moving and shaking the right direction. So for me, big picture wise, I think if you look at it as a season, yes, failure. Big picture, I think they took positive steps and know going forward what they can do to have better success moving forward. Therefore, to me, I think this season was still a step in the right direction.
I call it a failure that was seen to be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
To understand that you are doing things right, but as Keith Pelley said, change was needed. Change is also hard.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard decisions come when you are ultimately disappointed, don't reach your ultimate goal. And we heard it. Like, at the end of the day, this team became it's been cup or bust for this team for God knows how many years. But this year especially kind of felt like, I'm sure a lot of the guys, a lot of people up in the MLSC boardroom, not exactly been too thrilled with what they've seen in the Eastern Conference Final, to be like, yeah, well, if you just win that one game, it could be the Leafs. Now, I don't like that talk. I will personally say that because you never know. But I'm sure like that, like when you have expectations and they're not met, that's when people's eyes truly open and say, okay, like we haven't seen this for the last God knows how many years, but we finally see it. They finally see the light that things do need to change.
Well, and the first kind of domino to fall in terms of needing change, well, I guess you can go way back to Dubas was the first domino, and then Keefe was the second domino, and then finally the trifecta of the Shannon plan was completely over with Brendan Shanahan starting to go. But how many more dominoes from the Shannon plan era continue to fall as we move forward into Brad Treliving's Maple Leafs, right? I think that's a very interesting kind of perspective and question that we can ask ourselves moving forward. You didn't really get a chance to speak on what Keith Pelley had to say because you were away on the Monday show when we did when I kind of broke down his press conference. Why don't we come back? I want to get your thoughts on anything that Keith Pelley had to say. And there was a bombshell of an interview on the Sakaris and Price show out in Vancouver about a certain superstar possibly linked to Toronto this summer. We'll get into that and more later on here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's show is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keeping you feeling fuller longer. I'm a big fan of the no-shell variety. It's a great grab-and-go snack, whether you're on the road, working at your desk, and just need that quick protein boost. They're a go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a true classic. And you can get them in many different flavors. Or if you're someone that likes to get them really healthy, you can get them unsalted. Get snackin and crackin with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every day, chatting all things Leafs on the Locked On Leafs podcast, which is free and available wherever you get your podcasts and also available on YouTube as well. All right, Dave, we asked the big question of whether or not this year was considered a waste or a step in the right direction. I think, in a way you could, two things can be true. Like, yes, it was a waste in a year where I guess you wasted the final season of Mitch Marner. And if he leaves, you got nothing out of it. You wasted the final year of John Tavares. You wasted a core, a big year for Matthews and for Nylander, right? One of their prime years. But ultimately, I think that this is a team that knows pretty much what they need moving forward, I think.
Yep.
And I think that this season could be looked at as, although they didn't get the job done, I think they learned something. Maybe not the players. That's a completely different conversation. I don't know if the core can learn any more than they have over the last few years, but I think the guys up top learned a little bit more about this group, whether it's Tree Living, whether it's Craig Berube, or whether it's Keith Pelley, who it was his first full season with this team as well, right? And it was his first year where he was able to kind of see how things are run, and he'll now be able to put his fingerprints kind of on this team. And his first move, real big move as the president of MLSE, was to decide to not renew Brendan Shanahan's contract. And he spoke on Friday afternoon, Dave. If you guys missed it on the last episode, I kind of went into detail on what he had to say and gave my response to his remarks. Just curious, Dave, if anything kind of stuck out to you that you want to follow up on for today's show, give you a voice on what he had to say from Friday.
Well, it's funny because they asked him about, the pending free agents, and he basically said like he's not there to talk about player contracts and things like that. And I'm like, as much as he doesn't want to put his foot in his mouth or, make him say something that might cause more buzz, I think that he knows himself that this is not like we would love to have him back, because this has no longer become a Leafs decision. This is a Mitch Marner decision that I think was made a long time ago. And I think Keith Pelley is trying to temper expectations on what's happening with Mitch Marner.
Really? That's how you read into that? You believe Keith believes that it's not that whether or not they want Marner back or not. It's Marner probably doesn't want to come back, and therefore there's no sense talking about it. That's how you read that.
Yeah, like he basically said, we'll see what happens with Mitch Marner in the weeks ahead.
Yeah.
At no point did he said, you know what, if we can find a way to bring, like, he doesn't have to say much. All he had to say was, if we can find a way to bring him back, we'd love to have him back. Craig Berube said, would you love to see Mitch in Toronto and John back in Toronto? And he's like 100%. Keith Pelley could have said that, and he didn't.
He could have. You're right. But it's interesting because if you go back to a year ago, Brad Treliving was asked kind of the same questions if he was going to start, doing some extension talks with Marner and Tavares, heading into the summer. And he kind of said the same things, right? Where he wasn't necessarily all in on making sure that they got it done. Whereas when he took the job and when he was asked those questions about Austin Matthews, it was different. It was, Austin, we're going to get it done. Like, we want Austin to be here. He's a big part of our team. We're going to make sure that we get it done. And they did, right? They did get it done. Ultimately, he signed the deal, in the summer, and he became the captain, and the rest is history. But they never got the deal done with Mitch Marner. It never happened, and it never got done through the season. And right now we're over a week into the off season, and there still isn't an extension done with Mitch Marner. And it's to a point where it's like, okay, maybe he is really going to test free agency. Doesn't mean he can't come back. Doesn't mean that once he goes and sees what's out there, maybe teams, aren't willing to give him the blank check that he believes he's going to get, or that Darren Ferris has, told him he's going to get potentially. But it's interesting what is going to happen with Mitch Marner this upcoming off season. Anything else that kind of caught your eye when it came to the press conference? What I did like is the comment, we were a good team, but good isn't good enough.
Yep.
Which I thought was a perfect way to encapsulate kind of what the Leafs have been over the last few years, and why ultimately he decided to put an end to the Shanna plan, because the Shanna plan was a good plan, right? It was a good plan. Got them to the playoffs every year, sold a bunch of jerseys, sold a bunch of tickets. They won a lot of games, they scored a lot of goals, but they weren't a great enough team to get it done when it mattered and get over the hump and win the big one, the Stanley Cup. And I think he looked at it and realized that, Yeah, they've been good, but they haven't been great. We need to do something different to try and make this team great. And he did say that moving on from Brendan was a step in that direction to getting them back into being a cup contending team. So I thought that was also kind of an interesting little soundbite from Keith Pelley on Friday.
Yeah, and then you like kind of listen to him talk about Craig Berube, right? And how he views him as an asset they can use. And I'm like, well, I'm sure like Craig Berube's given his opinion on what he is looking for. As the head coach, like, I'm sure the GM's gone to the head coach, like, hey, we're thinking of such and such player. What do you think? To me, I always get weary when a coach is thrown into doing more front office stuff, because once in a while you need to separate the coach and the GM. Like,
Barry Trotz. Look at what's going on in Nashville right now with Barry Trotz. He finally goes from being a longtime coach, goes to being a general manager, and all of a sudden he makes a bunch of signings in the summer. Didn't go so well, did it?
Right, looks good on paper, but then it's like, okay, maybe it was a little too. Like, remember, everyone applauded the Nashville Predators for going and signing a bunch of guys, and then it's like, oh, well, wait, why can't this team score? Why can't this team figure out a way to win? Why are they so bad? Well, maybe it's because sometimes throwing a bunch of guys into the mix, but then not having the right plan of how to integrate them into a lineup. Like, you would think a coach would know how to do that, especially a coach who became a GM. They're two totally different things. So as much as you'll definitely take Craig Berube's input, maybe pump the brakes a little bit on saying, let's have Craig do a bit more.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that comment. I didn't read it that way, as if like Craig's going to have a massive say, but I think it's good for him to have a say in what he thinks will work and what won't work for what his system is, the players that he feels, will help them get to the next level. I mean, this guy's won a Stanley Cup. He's been able to push the right buttons. He's been able to put together a nucleus, a mix of players that work, right? So I think that's very possible that they're going to ask him for his input on things, but I don't know if he's going to have much control. I still believe that's very much going to be the role and responsibility of Brad Treliving, in which it should be. And the first couple of years he's been here, I think he's done a pretty good job of evaluating talent and addressing and identifying what this team needs. Like last offseason, lots of really good pickups, right? Think about who he added. He added OEL, added Chris Tanev, added Steven Lorentz. Then at the deadline, or Anthony Stolarz also, I should mention. Then at the deadline, he had Scott Lawton and Brandon Carlo. Like all five of those players were key contributors, big time players for this team. And it's exactly how Treliving wants to build his roster, right? It's kind of the identity of what they are and what they want to be. So I have faith that I think Treliving will be able to get some things right here and kind of put this team in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. And the fact that he even contemplated trading Mitch Marner and looking at a deal for Rantanen.
It doesn't sound like he contemplated it. It sounded like he wanted to make the trade and Marner said no.
Like the fact that he knew something wasn't right with that situation and something needed to be done. We've it's too bad it took him this long to realize it. But like we kind of said, like at some point, someone like you have to make a change within the actual core to shake it up. But
yeah, and that goes to, I think, what we spoke about last summer was how the real waste year was last year, in my opinion, right? That was the real waste because you kept the same coach, right? New GM, but same coach. What were you really going to learn if you're a general manager coming in, right? Because now all of a sudden, okay, you fire your coach, but now you're starting with a blank slate again where it's like, okay, now we got to see what's up. Whereas if you would have just full on, all right, you both Sheldon and Dubas gone, you bring in a new coach, you bring in a new GM, and you start fresh there. And all of a sudden you have 2 years to find out if Mitch Marner can do anything different with a new coach, or if this whole group can do anything with new coaching, instead of just 1 year. And that 1 year at the end of it, if you didn't get Marner signed while he's walking, you're getting nothing. So to me, this wasn't the waste year. The waste year was the first season with Brad Treliving in tow. This year, I think, was more of a step in that in that positive direction.
Well, like, also think about it. Like, a couple years ago, the Leafs made it to the second round. Okay, positive step forward. But they decide, you know what, we're going to make some changes to the front office. We're going to get rid of Kyle Dubas, but we're going to keep Sheldon Keefe because we feel like
that's what I mean. That's where it was the waste.
And as you said, not only wasted, that was the step back, because it was, same result. Game 7 loss, first round.
Yeah.
And then, the coaches, not brought back. It felt like more like a convenient move rather than probably should have been done a lot earlier. Like, that second round series against Florida, as good as it was to see this team in the second round, they were out. Like, Keith was out coached. Yeah. And so I think that was the detriment to Brendan Shanahan. He wasn't always all in on the moves that need to be made, right? I pointed it back to 2021 after the loss to Montreal. Tinker around, right? We believe in this core. And to me, that's, I think, where Keith Pelley had a really good line. He kept saying, well, I wasn't here for the other 9 years. I can only speak to the 1 year I was with this team. And I'm like, Keith, you probably had so many people you talked to from when you took the job and evaluated this team to know that you didn't need to look at it yourself for a year. You could have asked us, Keith. Yeah. And we could have told you need to do that.
Last year, we did say that they should have cleaned house last year, right? Yep. That Shanny should have been fired last year. If they were going to come in, Keith Pelley comes in, all right, out goes Shanny, and let's implement this new regime right away. Like, we already wasted 1 year. Why are we going to waste 2? Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if that ended up happening. But now I guess we know moving forward, like, this is Treliving's team. Berube's the coach, and there's no more middleman between Treliving and management. So, or Treliving and ownership, with now Keith Pelley kind of being the only figurehead at this point. Go ahead, Dave.
If I'm Keith Pelley, the one thing I'm telling Brad Treliving, let's not let any of our players, let's say star players, go to a final year of their contract without any sort of idea of what the heck is going on.
Well,
because the only one that Treliving was able to get done with somewhat of an idea was Austin Matthews. We look at Nylander, you look at Marner. Those are 2 situations that could have been avoided. You could have said to yourself, look, you want to be here or not? This is what we're looking to offer you. What do you think? If there was no willing to, like, they should have had a harder line. I know with Marner it's different because of no movement.
Well, no, it's not that. For me, it's more so. I mean, obviously that played into a role, but I think there truly was a thought process where the Leafs did not want to make a hard stance on if they wanted to bring back Marner until they saw what happened in the playoffs. Like, I really believe that is it. And they kind of pigeonholed themselves and rolled the dice and said, you know what, we want to find this out, and we're willing to lose him for nothing if it doesn't work. Because the worst case scenario is we signed him to an extension last summer, and then this happens, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, our hands are completely tied. Like, now we're attached to Marner on a long-term 8-year deal. You've got Willie at 8 years. You've got Matthews. So you would have been forced to run it back again. So I think it is different. Like, I didn't anticipate them figuring out a deal with Mitch last summer. I think they always wanted to find out what happens in the postseason. And unfortunately, the same thing that happened last year, the year before that, the year before that, and the year before that. Mitch Marner didn't get it done when it mattered, failed to win the big one, game 7s, and what was it, games 4 through 7? His numbers are just abysmal throughout his entire career. In games 4 through 7, in this series against Florida, I think he had like 2 assists or something like that, 3 shots in the last 4 games, like, just atrocious stuff. And simply they know, like, we can't. I don't think we can go forward with this, which is tough because, like, he's a great player. He really is. He's a good player. I think he can, like, somewhat execute to what Berube wants, but unfortunately, the mix just isn't good enough. And the easiest way to make change is to just let him walk and let him go, and that's ultimately what I believe will end up happening this offseason. Why don't we save the free agent talk for the next show? So why don't we put a pin on that, and we'll come back tomorrow and we'll get into what John Shannon had to say on the Sakaris and Price show about a big time free agent not named Mitch Marner that could be linked to Toronto. So we can get into that and discuss possibly what else the Maple Leafs could be looking to do. We'll look at the paths forward for Toronto at this point, so that we can get into on tomorrow's podcast. But that'll do it for us here today on the show. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the podcast. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.